Most people walk through life believing they are the center of it. Every action, every decision, filtered through the lens of how others will perceive them. The fear of judgment keeps them in check. The need for approval shapes their choices. But here's the truth: no one cares as much as you think they do. This isn't meant to be discouraging. In fact, it's liberating. The world is not fixated on you. People are too absorbed in their own lives, their own problems, their own insecurities. They don't have time to scrutinize your mistakes or analyze your every move. And if they do, they forget quickly. Think about the last time you embarrassed yourself. Maybe you misspoke in a conversation, tripped in public, or made a bad decision. At the time, it felt massive, like a defining moment. But days later, did it still matter? To you, maybe. To others, unlikely. They've already moved on. This realization does two things. First, it removes the illusion that you're under constant evaluation. Second, it frees you from the exhausting effort of trying to manage how others see you. You don't have to impress them. You don't have to seek validation. You don't have to waste energy curating an image that no one is paying attention to. People's opinions are fickle. They change with time, mood, and circumstance. What someone thinks about you today may be different tomorrow. And more importantly, their thoughts about you are often shallow, passing judgments that lack depth or lasting significance. You've probably formed quick opinions about others without much thought. That's how most people function. When you internalize this, the weight of external approval begins to fade. You stop overanalyzing your interactions. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop hesitating before taking action. The fear of judgment loses its power when you understand that no one is truly watching. But what about the exceptions, the people who do care? Close friends, family, mentors. Even they are not as focused on you as you might think. They care, but they also have their own lives to navigate. Their attention is divided. Their concerns extend far beyond you. And that's not a bad thing. It simply means you are not, and never will be, the main character in their story. This might feel unsettling at first. The idea that your life is not the focal point of anyone else's. But this is where the gift lies. If no one is watching closely, you are free to experiment, free to fail, free to make mistakes and move forward without the burden of an audience. It also means you have space to focus on what truly matters, your own values, goals, and principles. You no longer have to shape your life around what others might think. You can operate on your own terms. The pressure to conform fades. The need for approval weakens. Ironically, this mindset shift often leads to better outcomes. When you stop worrying about how you're perceived, you become more confident. You take risks. You pursue what actually interests you rather than what will earn applause. And in doing so, you often gain the respect and admiration of others, not because you sought it, but because you no longer needed it. There is another layer to this. If no one cares as much as you think, then their criticisms also lose their weight. Negative opinions become background noise. Rejection becomes less personal. A bad first impression, forgettable. A mistake, temporary. The freedom in knowing that no one is keeping score is immense. This doesn't mean you should ignore feedback or dismiss genuine advice. It simply means you don't have to be controlled by external judgment. You can take what is useful and discard the rest. You can listen without feeling obligated to conform. Most people live under an invisible pressure, the pressure of imagined scrutiny. They hesitate, they hold back, they seek permission. But the truth is, no one is waiting to approve or disapprove of your every move. The moment you realize this, you reclaim control. There is also something else to consider. If no one truly cares, then your failures are not as significant as you assume. You can recover from setbacks faster. You can move on without lingering guilt. You can try again without shame. The fear of failure often holds people back, not because the consequences are unbearable, but because they assume others will judge them for it. But if no one is really paying attention, failure becomes nothing more than an event, something to learn from and move past. Even success is affected by this realization. Many people chase achievements, not for personal fulfillment, but for the recognition that comes with them. But if people are not as focused on you as you think, then external success is often a hollow pursuit. If your motivation relies on the approval of others, you will always be dependent on forces outside your control. But if you shift your focus inward, pursuing what matters to you rather than what impresses others, you free yourself from that cycle. So the next time you find yourself second-guessing, hesitating, or holding back because of what others might think, remember this: they probably aren't thinking about you at all. And that is a gift. Most people spend their lives adjusting themselves to fit the expectations of others. They make decisions based on what will keep the peace, avoid conflict, or earn approval. They seek validation, fearing the discomfort of rejection or disapproval. But in the end, this strategy fails. No matter how hard you try, you will never satisfy everyone. People's expectations are contradictory. One person wants you to be more assertive, another wants you to be more accommodating. One group admires confidence, another finds it arrogant. If you shape yourself to fit what others want, you'll constantly shift, never fully settling into who you are. Trying to please everyone is not only impossible, it's exhausting. It forces you to weigh every word, every action, every decision against an invisible set of expectations. You become hyper-aware of how you're perceived, constantly adjusting to avoid disapproval. This is a mental prison. Worse, it dilutes your identity. If you spend your life adapting to the preferences of others, what remains of you? If every belief, habit, or preference is up for negotiation based on external opinions, then who exactly are you? The answer becomes unclear. At its core, people-pleasing is a survival instinct, an attempt to gain acceptance, to avoid rejection, to maintain social belonging. But it backfires. Instead of earning deep respect, it often results in being taken for granted. Those who constantly seek approval are rarely admired. They are tolerated, maybe even liked, but not respected. The truth is, people respect those who have clear boundaries, those who are willing to say no, those who act based on principles rather than fear of disapproval. Some believe that putting others first will make them loved. But in reality, being excessively agreeable often leads to resentment, both from yourself and from those around you. When you constantly prioritize others at your own expense, frustration builds. You begin to feel unseen, unappreciated, or even used. Over time, this erodes your sense of self-worth. And what happens when you finally assert yourself? The people who benefited from your compliance often resist. They are used to getting their way. They may push back, act disappointed, or even accuse you of being selfish. This is an illusion. The real problem: they were comfortable with the old dynamic where their needs mattered more than yours. The discomfort of upsetting people is temporary. The exhaustion of constantly managing their opinions is not. There is another layer to this. Most of the approval you seek doesn't matter in the long run. People's opinions are fleeting. Their judgments are based on incomplete information, personal biases, and shifting emotions. What pleases them today might not please them tomorrow. Their approval is not a stable foundation to build your life upon. Instead of trying to satisfy everyone, it is better to focus on living in alignment with your own values. This doesn't mean disregarding others entirely. It means weighing their input against your own principles, rather than automatically prioritizing their preferences. This shift requires discomfort. Saying no feels unnatural at first. Setting boundaries may invite criticism. People who are used to your compliance may resist. But over time, something interesting happens. Those who only valued you for what you could give them start to fade away. The ones who remain are the ones who respect you for who you actually are. And what about those who disapprove? Let them. Not everyone will like you. That is a fundamental reality of life. Even the most respected figures in history had critics. The difference is, they didn't allow those critics to dictate their path. It's worth asking, why do we care so much about approval in the first place? The answer lies in social conditioning. From an early age, we are rewarded for fitting in, for meeting expectations, for being agreeable. The problem is, this conditioning never teaches us when to stop. It never teaches us that there is a point where prioritizing others begins to harm us. If you constantly shape yourself to be liked, you will always be at the mercy of other people's shifting opinions. Worse, you may find that the approval you worked so hard to earn is conditional. The moment you stop pleasing, it disappears. This is why self-respect is more valuable than external validation. When you respect yourself, you don't need to constantly seek approval. You don't need permission to make choices that align with your values. You don't need to justify why you are the way you are. Living for external approval is an endless race with no finish line. The sooner you stop running, the sooner you start living on your own terms. So, when faced with the pressure to please, ask yourself, is this decision aligned with my own values, or am I making it to avoid disapproval? The answer will tell you everything you need to know. Most people believe they have original thoughts, unique perspectives, and independent beliefs. But if you examine your mind closely, you'll realize that almost everything you think, say, or believe has been borrowed from someone else. From the moment you were born, you've been absorbing ideas. Your parents, teachers, friends, media, each has shaped how you see the world. The language you use, the moral values you hold, even your preferences and dislikes are, to a large extent, inherited. You didn't construct yourself from nothing. You were built by your environment. This is not a flaw, it's simply how human cognition works. We are pattern recognition machines, constantly gathering information, forming mental models, shaping our perceptions based on what we observe. But the problem arises when we mistake these accumulated ideas for an intrinsic, unchanging self. Think about the opinions you hold today. How many of them have remained exactly the same throughout your life? Likely, very few. What you believed 10 years ago might seem naive or even ridiculous now. Your views have shifted because new influences have replaced old ones. And this will continue for the rest of your life. If your beliefs can change, then what does that say about the idea of a core self? If the way you define yourself is constantly being rewritten by external influences, then where exactly do you exist in all of this? The uncomfortable truth, your identity is not as solid as it feels. It is a constantly evolving construct, shaped by the world around you. Every time you read a book, watch a video, have a conversation, or live through an experience, your mind updates itself, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in profound ones. This is why people so often struggle with self-definition. They try to pin down who they are, but the moment they do, something changes. A new idea enters their mind. A new experience alters their perspective, and suddenly, the old version of themselves no longer fits. Most of what you consider your own thoughts were given to you by someone else. Your political views, your opinions on success, your ideas about happiness, all shaped by countless external forces. Even your personality is a byproduct of genetics and social conditioning. You were taught how to behave, how to express yourself, how to react to situations. Over time, you internalized these behaviors until they felt like they were you. But here's the key insight. If your identity is constructed, then it is also flexible. You are not bound by the ideas you currently hold. You can question them, discard them, replace them. If everything you believe is just an accumulation of influences, then you are free to reshape those influences as you see fit. This is both liberating and unsettling. It means you are not as fixed as you might think, but it also means there is no single, stable version of you. The person you are today is different from who you were yesterday, and different from who you will be tomorrow. Understanding this can change how you approach personal growth. Instead of trying to find yourself, you realize that the self is not something to be discovered, but something to be shaped. You are an ongoing process, not a finished product. This also raises an important question. If your mind is a collection of other people's ideas, then which ideas are you choosing to keep? Are you holding on to beliefs simply because they were given to you? Or have you actually examined them to see if they align with what you truly value? Most people never question this. They go through life assuming that their thoughts are theirs, never realizing that those thoughts were placed there by someone else. But once you start questioning, you gain the ability to rewrite your own programming. The goal is not to erase all external influences. That would be impossible. The goal is to become aware of them, to recognize that your mind is a product of its environment, and then deliberately shape that environment in a way that serves you. So the next time you feel certain about something, ask yourself, where did this idea come from? If you trace it back far enough, you'll likely find that it was handed to you by someone else. The question is, do you still want to keep it? Keep it. At its core, nihilism is the recognition that life has no inherent meaning, no grand purpose, no cosmic significance, no deeper plan guiding your existence. This idea unsettles most people. They fear that without a built-in meaning, life becomes pointless. But that fear is misplaced. Nihilism, when fully understood, is not a philosophy of despair. It is a path to freedom. Most of what people call meaning is simply an illusion they've inherited. Society conditions them to believe that life must be about something, like success, morality, legacy, or happiness. They are told that meaning comes from religion, career, family, personal achievement. But these are all human constructs. They are frameworks imposed on existence, not objective truths. Nihilism removes these illusions. It forces you to see reality without artificial significance. The universe is indifferent. It does not care about your successes or failures. It does not assign purpose to your existence. This realization, at first, feels like a void. But that void is not a problem. It is an opportunity. If life has no inherent meaning, then you are free to create your own. You are no longer bound by imposed definitions of purpose. You no longer have to chase prepackaged goals handed down by tradition or culture. Instead, you decide what matters to you. This is what makes nihilism liberating. It strips away external expectations and allows you to live on your own terms. You don't have to justify your existence. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to live for anyone else's version of success. Some people fear that embracing nihilism leads to apathy. If nothing matters, why do anything? But that question assumes meaning must be imposed from the outside. In reality, meaning is subjective. You can still choose to care. You can still create, build, love, and experience. The difference is, you do these things because you choose to, not because you are obligated to. Nihilism removes unnecessary pressure. It eliminates the fear of failure. If nothing has inherent meaning, then there is no ultimate success or failure. Only experiences. You can pursue what interests you without the weight of expectation. You can take risks without the fear of cosmic consequences. This perspective also helps with suffering. Many struggle because they believe life should be fair. That hardships must have meaning. That pain must serve a higher purpose. Nihilism removes these illusions. Pain exists, but it does not have to be part of some grand design. It is simply a part of life. And when you stop searching for meaning in suffering, you stop being controlled by it. Nihilism also changes how you view death. Most fear death because they see it as the end of something significant. But if life has no inherent meaning, then death is simply the end of experience. Nothing more. It is not a tragedy, not an injustice, not something to be feared. It just is. This does not mean nihilism leads to cold detachment. In fact, it often has the opposite effect. When you stop expecting life to have external meaning, you begin to appreciate it for what it is. You stop living for abstract ideas and start engaging with the present moment. You stop seeking validation and start focusing on what actually brings you fulfillment. If you see the world through a nihilistic lens, you realize that everything, both the good and the bad, is temporary. This makes joy more meaningful, not less. If nothing is permanent, then every moment becomes valuable. Not because it serves a larger purpose, but because it is fleeting. There is another misconception about nihilism, that it means rejecting everything. But nihilism does not require you to discard all values or goals. It simply means recognizing that they are chosen, not dictated by some higher force. You can still care about people, build relationships, strive for success. The difference is, you do so because you decide to, not because you are following a script handed to you by society. Nihilism also has practical benefits. It allows you to detach from the pressures of social comparison. If nothing has inherent meaning, then status, wealth, and reputation lose their grip over you. You no longer have to measure yourself by arbitrary standards. You can live according to what genuinely brings you fulfillment, not what society tells you should be important. This is the paradox of nihilism. By accepting that nothing matters in an objective sense, you gain the ability to focus on what matters to you. You are free to define your own purpose, live by your own values, and shape your existence in a way that is truly your own. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by expectations, pressures, or fears about the meaning of life, remember this: there is no predefined meaning, and that is not a burden, that is freedom. That is freedom. If nihilism is the recognition that life has no inherent meaning, existentialism is the response. It does not reject nihilism, it accepts it. But instead of stopping at emptiness, existentialism asks, now what? The world does not provide meaning. There is no built-in purpose, no divine script, no universal standard by which a life is judged as good or successful. But this absence of meaning does not leave you powerless. It leaves you free. Free to decide what matters. Free to create your own values. Free to shape a life that is meaningful, not because the universe demands it, but because you choose it. Existentialism removes the illusion that meaning is something external, something you must search for and discover. Meaning is not found. It is made. It does not exist outside of you. It exists because of you. This is a shift in perspective. Many people believe meaning is something objective, something that exists independently of them. They assume that if life has no cosmic significance, then it must be meaningless. But existentialism rejects this. It says meaning is not something you uncover. It is something you construct. It is a process, not a destination. This realization is both empowering and terrifying. On one hand, you are no longer bound by external definitions of purpose. You do not have to live for society's expectations, for religious doctrines, for inherited beliefs about what a good life should be. You decide. But with that freedom comes responsibility. If there is no predefined meaning, then you alone are responsible for creating one. There is no instruction manual, no authority figure handing you a ready-made purpose, just you deciding what matters. Some people resist this idea. They want meaning to be given to them. They want certainty, structure, and a framework that tells them what to do. But existentialism offers no guarantees. It only offers choice. You can either take responsibility for crafting meaning, or you can reject that responsibility and live in denial, pretending that meaning is something external, something that exists without your participation. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the key figures in existentialist thought, described this as radical freedom. You are not trapped by fate. You are not controlled by some cosmic plan. You are free, but that freedom can be overwhelming. It means your life is not defined by external forces. It is defined by your actions, by what you choose to pursue, by the values you create for yourself. This is why existentialism emphasizes action. It does not ask, what is the meaning of life? It asks, what meaning will you create? Your life is not something that happens to you. It is something you actively shape. The choices you make, the principles you follow, the work you do. These are the things that give life meaning. Existentialism also forces you to confront a difficult truth. You cannot rely on external validation. If meaning is something you create, then no one else can give it to you. Society, culture, even close relationships, none of these can define your purpose for you. They can influence you, but they cannot decide for you. That responsibility is yours alone. This idea can feel isolating. It removes the comfort of believing that meaning is something universal, something shared by all. But it also removes the pressure to conform. You are not required to live by someone else's definition of success, happiness, or fulfillment. You are free to define those things for yourself. There is another key insight in existentialism. Meaning is fluid. What matters to you today may not matter to you in 10 years. Your sense of purpose can evolve, shift, and change as you grow. This is not a flaw. It is a feature of human existence. You are not a fixed entity. You are a process, constantly redefining yourself. This is why existentialism rejects the idea of a singular, ultimate purpose. It does not claim there is one correct way to live. Instead, it says meaning is whatever you commit yourself to. If you dedicate yourself to something, an idea, a cause, a craft, a relationship, then that is your meaning, not because the universe demands it, but because you have chosen it. Of course, this also means you must accept the consequences of your choices. If you are free to define your own meaning, then you cannot blame fate, society, or external forces for your decisions. You cannot outsource responsibility. You are not a passive participant in life. You are an active creator of it. This is what makes existentialism both liberating and challenging. It does not give you easy answers. It does not provide a comforting framework. It does not promise that life will always feel meaningful. Instead, it gives you responsibility. It places meaning in your hands and asks, what will you do with it? So the next time you feel lost, uncertain, or aimless, remember this: life does not come with meaning pre-installed. But that is not a problem. That is an opportunity. You do not need permission to create meaning. You do not need validation. You do not need certainty. You only need the willingness to choose. Because in the end, meaning is not something you search for. It is something you build. You build. Chaos is unavoidable. Life is unpredictable, full of setbacks, frustrations, and circumstances beyond your control. Most people react to this with anxiety, anger, or despair. They fight against the inevitable, trying to control what cannot be controlled. Stoicism offers a different approach. It does not promise to eliminate suffering. It teaches you how to endure it with clarity and strength. At its core, Stoicism is about control, understanding what is within your power and what is not. Most suffering comes from trying to control what cannot be controlled, like other people's opinions, external events, or the passage of time. The Stoic mindset shifts your focus inward. Instead of wasting energy on things beyond your influence, you direct it toward mastering your own mind. This is the foundation of Stoic calm. It is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected by life. It is about choosing how you respond. You cannot control whether misfortune happens, but you can control whether it destroys your peace. One of the most well-known Stoic principles is the dichotomy of control. There are only two categories of things, those within your control and those outside of it. Your thoughts, your actions, your judgments, these belong to you, and everything else like weather, luck, the actions of others, does not. The moment you internalize this, much of life's frustration disappears. Most people spend their energy trying to manipulate external factors, hoping that if they arrange everything perfectly, they will finally be at peace. This is an illusion. No amount of external success can create lasting tranquility. Peace comes from within, from the ability to remain steady regardless of circumstances. Stoicism is not about passivity. It does not mean accepting injustice or avoiding action. It means acting with purpose and discipline, without being emotionally destabilized by factors beyond your control. A Stoic does not retreat from the world, they engage with it, but without attachment to outcomes. Imagine losing something valuable, a job, a relationship, financial security. The natural reaction is distress. But a Stoic asks, was this ever truly mine? Everything in life is temporary. Nothing is guaranteed. By accepting this, loss becomes less painful. You do not cling to what was never yours to keep. This mindset extends to relationships. You cannot control how others think or feel. You can treat them well, communicate honestly, and act with integrity, but their response is their own. If they misunderstand you, if they reject you, if they betray you, that is outside your control. The only thing you govern is how you respond. This perspective also applies to criticism. Most people spend their lives fearing judgment, trying to mold themselves into something acceptable. But a Stoic understands that opinions are just that, opinions. They are reflections of the speaker, not absolute truths. If someone insults you, their words have no power unless you grant it to them. Stoicism also reframes adversity. Instead of seeing hardship as an obstacle, it views it as an opportunity. Difficulties are training grounds for resilience. A challenge is not something to be avoided. It is something to be used. Strength is built through struggle, and character is forged in discomfort. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, obstacles are not barriers, they are the path. Every hardship is a chance to practice patience, discipline, and wisdom. This does not mean pain ceases to exist. Loss, failure, and uncertainty still happen, but their emotional grip weakens. A Stoic does not rely on external stability. They cultivate an internal fortress, one that remains unshaken no matter what happens. There is a common misconception that Stoicism means emotional suppression. This is incorrect. Stoicism does not tell you to feel nothing. It tells you to master what you feel. emotions will arise, but they do not have to control your actions. A Stoic experiences sadness, frustration, even anger, but does not let these emotions dictate their behavior. Another aspect of Stoic thought is the practice of negative visualization. This means imagining worst-case scenarios before they happen. It is not about pessimism, it is about preparation. If you mentally rehearse loss, failure, or hardship, you become less afraid of them. By anticipating difficulties, you weaken their impact. Stoicism also encourages gratitude, but not in a sentimental way. It teaches you to appreciate what you have, knowing that nothing is permanent. Every moment, every possession, every relationship is temporary. This awareness makes you value them more, while also preparing you to let them go when the time comes. At its core, Stoicism is about engagement with life, not withdrawal. It teaches you to focus on what you can control, to accept what you cannot, and to move through life with clarity and discipline. In a chaotic world, this is the only true source of peace. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, is this within my control? If it is, act. If it is not, let it go. This is the path to calm in chaos. Thinking is useful until it isn't. The ability to analyze, plan, and reflect is a strength. But when thinking turns into overthinking, it becomes a problem. Instead of bringing clarity, it creates confusion. Instead of leading to action, it causes paralysis. Overthinking is not deep thinking. Deep thinking is deliberate. It has direction. While overthinking is repetitive, looping the same thoughts, asking the same questions, without reaching a conclusion. It is a mental trap, fueled by doubt, fear, and the illusion that more thinking will eventually lead to certainty. Most people overthink because they fear making the wrong choice. They assume that if they analyze every possibility, they can eliminate uncertainty. But this is an illusion. No amount of thinking can remove all risk. No decision comes with complete certainty. Life is unpredictable. The longer you try to figure everything out, the longer you delay action. Overthinking also comes from a desire for control. The mind believes that if it runs through every scenario, it can prevent failure, embarrassment, or regret. But the truth is, most things in life are outside of your control. No amount of thinking can guarantee a perfect outcome, and the more you try to control, the more trapped you become in your own thoughts. This is why overthinking often leads to inaction. The more you analyze, the more potential problems you see. The more problems you see, the more hesitant you become. Eventually, you are stuck, not because you lack ability, but because you are afraid to move forward without guarantees. There is a simple truth that stops overthinking in its tracks. You do not need to know everything before you act. Most decisions do not require perfect information. They require movement. The only way to gain clarity is to take action, observe the results, and adjust as needed. Many people believe that thinking prepares them for action, but overthinking often replaces action. Instead of doing something, they keep thinking about doing something, convincing themselves they are being productive, when in reality, they are avoiding the discomfort of uncertainty. This applies to every aspect of life. Overthinking relationships leads to hesitation, missed opportunities, and unnecessary doubt. Overthinking career decisions leads to endless second-guessing, delaying progress. Overthinking social interactions leads to anxiety, making natural conversation impossible. The solution is not to stop thinking altogether. It is to think in a way that leads to action. If a thought does not lead to a decision or a useful insight, it is just mental noise. Recognizing this is the first step to breaking the cycle. One way to counter overthinking is through mental minimalism. reducing unnecessary thought loops by focusing only on what is relevant. When a thought does not serve a purpose, you discard it. This is not ignoring reality. It is filtering out distractions so you can focus on what actually matters. Another method is physical action. Movement disrupts overthinking. A simple walk, a workout, or even changing your environment can break the mental loop. Overthinking thrives in stillness. Taking action forces it to weaken. Stoic philosophy offers another approach. Preparing for the worst. Most overthinking is rooted in fear of failure, embarrassment, or making the wrong choice. But if you accept that failure is possible and that you can handle it, fear loses its power. Once fear weakens, overthinking fades. Perfectionism also fuels overthinking. Many people hesitate to act because they want the perfect plan, the perfect words, the perfect moment. But perfection is an illusion. Progress comes from action, not endless refinement. No decision is ever made with absolute certainty. The sooner you accept this, the faster you escape overthinking. Another way to break the cycle is to limit how much time you spend analyzing a decision. Set a deadline. Instead of analyzing indefinitely, you give yourself a fixed time to make a choice. When the time is up, you act without second guessing. This prevents endless loops of hesitation. Overthinking also thrives on self-doubt. Many people assume they need more information, more confidence, or more preparation before acting. But often, the only thing missing is action itself. Clarity comes from doing, not from waiting to feel ready. The mind will always try to pull you back into overthinking, telling you to analyze more, to wait longer, to gather more information. But at some point, you must decide. Do I keep thinking or do I start doing? Because in the end, clarity comes from action, not from thinking about action. Most people live as if their problems are the center of the universe. They obsess over setbacks, overanalyze failures, and magnify inconveniences. But the reality is this: your problems are not as big as they seem. This is not to say that difficulties aren't real, but most of what we perceive as overwhelming is made larger by the way we think about it. The human mind exaggerates problems, treating minor setbacks as major crises. A bad day feels like a ruined week. A single mistake feels like a defining failure. An awkward interaction feels like social humiliation. But in truth, these things are small. Consider any problem you've had in the past year, something that at the time seemed massive, and now look at it from today's perspective. Does it still hold the same weight? Chances are it has faded. What once felt urgent now seems trivial. And this pattern repeats throughout life. The things that seem unbearable now will likely be forgettable later. Why does this happen? Because problems feel bigger in the moment than they actually are. The mind gets trapped in short-term thinking, assumes that what feels bad now will always feel bad, and fails to see that time shrinks problems. What is overwhelming today will be insignificant in a month, a year, a decade. Most problems are temporary: a failed exam, a lost job, a rejected application. None of these are permanent barriers. They are setbacks, not endings. Even larger problems like financial struggles or relationship breakdowns lose their weight over time. They may seem like defining moments, but they are just moments. Another reason problems seem bigger than they are is because we assume we are the center of everyone's attention. We believe others notice our mistakes, judge our failures, and remember our missteps. But in reality, people are too busy thinking about themselves. They are not tracking your every failure, not analyzing your every move. What feels like a public embarrassment to you is barely noticed by anyone else. This is why perspective is everything. A problem that consumes your thoughts today will shrink if you step back and look at it from a wider view. Ask yourself, will this matter in a year? Will I even remember this in 5 years? If the answer is no, then the problem is smaller than it feels. This does not mean all problems should be ignored. Some challenges require action. But even then, most are manageable. They only feel insurmountable because of how we frame them. A difficult conversation is just a conversation. A setback is just a delay. A failure is just information, feedback that allows for adjustment. Perspective also changes how you handle stress. Many people react to small problems with anxiety, frustration, or panic. But if you train yourself to see problems as smaller than they appear, your emotional response shifts. Instead of reacting impulsively, you stay calm. Instead of feeling trapped, you focus on solutions. One way to do this is through mental zooming. Imagine your problem from a distant viewpoint. Picture yourself looking at it from 10 years in the future, or better yet, picture yourself from space. From that scale, your worries are microscopic, barely visible in the grand scheme of things. This is not to minimize real struggles, but to put them in context. Another way to shrink problems is to compare them to worse situations. If your biggest issue today is an inconvenient meeting, a delayed flight, or an awkward conversation, consider the scale of human suffering. There are people fighting for survival, people dealing with loss, illness, and war. Your problem, in contrast, is small. This is not to dismiss it, but to remind yourself that it is manageable. There is also value in reframing problems as challenges. Instead of seeing difficulties as threats, see them as tests. Hardships become training, struggles become opportunities for growth. A difficult job, a failed project, a tough conversation, each is a lesson, not a life sentence. This mindset prevents problems from overwhelming you. Another useful perspective shift is recognizing that most solutions are within reach. Many people assume that problems are bigger than they are because they don't take action. But once you start solving an issue, it usually shrinks. Even the most overwhelming situations can often be broken down into smaller, solvable steps. Even when problems feel overwhelming, they rarely define you. You are not your failures, not your worst moments, not the sum of your temporary difficulties. And once you understand this, setbacks lose their grip. So the next time a problem feels massive, step back, ask yourself, is this as big as it seems? Because in most cases, the answer is no. Perfection is an illusion. It does not exist. Yet, many people spend their lives chasing it, obsessing over details, avoiding failure, hesitating to act unless conditions are ideal. They believe that if they get everything just right, they will finally be satisfied. But perfectionism does not lead to fulfillment. It leads to paralysis. At its core, perfectionism is fear. The fear of criticism, the fear of failure, the fear of being seen as inadequate. People think that if they can make something flawless, they can avoid these fears. But the truth is, no matter how perfect something seems, someone will always find fault with it. No work is beyond criticism. No action is completely safe. No effort guarantees universal approval. Perfectionism is also based on a flawed assumption that if you wait long enough, refine something enough, or plan enough, you can eliminate all mistakes. But reality does not work that way. Mistakes are inevitable. Even the most skilled, prepared, and intelligent people make them. The pursuit of perfection does not prevent mistakes. It just delays progress. Perfectionism is a trap because it stops people from starting. They tell themselves they are not ready, that they need more preparation, that they must wait for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment never comes. There is always something to improve, something to fix, something to rethink. In the end, nothing gets done. This applies to everything: work, creativity, relationships, decision-making. A person obsessed with perfection will hesitate to apply for a job because their resume isn't perfect. They will put off launching a project because it's not ready. They will delay an important conversation because they haven't found the perfect words. Meanwhile, others with fewer hesitations move forward, gain experience, and succeed, not because they are better, but because they are willing to act. Progress is made through action, not endless refinement. The first version of anything will be flawed. The first attempt at any skill will be imperfect. But without that first step, there is no second step, no improvement, no mastery. Those who achieve the most are not those who start perfectly, but those who start despite imperfection and adjust along the way. Perfectionism also wastes time. The extra hours spent tweaking, rethinking, and second-guessing rarely make a meaningful difference. The gap between good and perfect is often invisible to anyone but the perfectionist. In most cases, the work that is 90% complete is indistinguishable from the work that took twice as long to reach 99%. The cost of that last 1% is almost never worth it. A practical mindset is superior to a perfectionist mindset. The goal should not be perfection, it should be sufficiency. What is good enough to function? What is good enough to move forward? This does not mean settling for mediocrity. It means recognizing when extra effort adds value and when it does not. Some of the greatest thinkers, creators, and innovators embraced imperfection. Writers publish books with flaws. Entrepreneurs launch products that are not fully polished. Athletes compete knowing they are not in peak condition. They understand that done is better than perfect, because perfect never arrives. Perfectionism also limits creativity. The fear of making something imperfect kills experimentation. It stops people from trying new approaches, taking risks, or thinking differently. True innovation does not come from perfection. It comes from iteration, from making something, learning from it, and refining it over time. This applies to personal growth as well. Many people avoid challenges because they fear not being good enough. They won't start learning a language because they don't want to make mistakes. They won't try a new hobby because they don't want to look like a beginner. But every expert was once a beginner. Every skilled person once struggled. The only difference is that they were willing to be imperfect in the beginning. A useful mindset shift is to replace perfection with completion. Instead of asking, "Is this perfect?" ask, "Is this finished?" Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, ask, "What can I do right now?" Instead of fearing mistakes, ask, "What can I learn from this attempt?" The irony of perfectionism is that it often leads to worse results. A person who waits for the perfect conditions to act will fall behind the person who moves forward despite uncertainty. A person who overedits their work may miss deadlines, while a person who submits something imperfect may receive feedback and improve. The pursuit of perfection often leads to stagnation, while the pursuit of progress leads to growth. There is no perfect project, no perfect plan, no perfect moment. There is only now the opportunity to do what you can with what you have. So the next time you find yourself hesitating, ask yourself, am I waiting for perfect, or am I ready to move forward? Because the truth is, perfection is pointless, progress is everything. Most people live as if they are the center of reality. They see the world through their own experiences, their own struggles, their own desires. They assume others are watching, judging, and reacting to everything they do. But the truth is, no one is thinking about you as much as you think they are. This is not meant to diminish your existence. It is meant to free you. The belief that you are the main character in some grand narrative is what fuels anxiety, self-consciousness, and the endless need for approval. The moment you realize that people are too occupied with their own lives to constantly analyze yours, a weight is lifted. Most of the pressure you feel, pressure to impress, to avoid mistakes, to maintain an image, exists only in your mind, the awkward moment you replay in your head. No one else remembers it, the embarrassing thing you said. It has already been forgotten, the social misstep you regret. Others were too busy thinking about themselves to care. People are not constantly watching you, they are focused on their own problems, their own insecurities, their own lives. You are just a passing thought in their day. If that, even those closest to you are not thinking about you all the time. They have their own concerns, their own struggles, their own priorities. This realization is not depressing, it is liberating. It means you are free to live without the constant fear of judgment. It means you do not have to perform, impress, or curate every aspect of your life. You can make mistakes. You can be awkward. You can exist without the weight of imagined scrutiny. Many people waste energy trying to control how they are perceived. They edit themselves in conversation, avoid risks to prevent embarrassment, and hesitate to express opinions out of fear of judgment. But this is a losing game. No matter what you do, people will interpret you through their own biases, their own perspectives, their own experiences. You have no control over this. Instead of obsessing over how others see you, focus on what actually matters: your work, your growth, your principles. The way you treat people, these things are real. The imagined opinions of strangers are not. Understanding that you are not the main character also shifts how you view relationships. When you believe the world revolves around you, every interaction becomes about your feelings, your expectations, your needs. But relationships are not one-sided stories. Other people are not supporting characters in your life. They are living their own lives, with their own struggles and priorities. This shift in thinking leads to better communication, less entitlement, and deeper connections. It allows you to see people as they are, not just as they relate to you, and it also makes you less reactive. When someone is distant, unresponsive, or seems uninterested, it is rarely about you. They have their own worries, their own stresses, their own reality. When you stop acting like the main character, you develop a better understanding of the world, you become less self-absorbed, you listen more, you assume less. You become a better friend, a better partner, a better person. It also changes how you handle failure. If you believe you are the main character, every setback feels monumental. Every mistake feels like a public disaster. But when you understand that most people are too occupied with their own lives to dwell on yours, failure becomes less terrifying. You can try, fail, and move on because no one is keeping score. This also applies to success. Many people chase achievements, not for themselves, but for the approval of others. They want recognition, validation, status. But when you realize that no one is watching as closely as you think, this pressure fades. You can pursue goals for their own sake, not for the applause of an audience that isn't paying attention. Stepping out of the main character mindset also helps you let go of resentment. If someone ignores your message, cancels plans, or seems distracted, it is usually not personal. They are caught up in their own world, just like you are. Realizing this prevents unnecessary misunderstandings and allows for more patience, more empathy, and fewer assumptions. The world does not revolve around you, and that is a good thing. It means you are free from imagined scrutiny, free from the pressure to always perform, free to focus on what actually matters. So the next time you catch yourself worrying about what others think, remind yourself, you are not the main character, and that is exactly why you can live however you choose. Nothing stays the same. People change, circumstances shift. What felt urgent yesterday is irrelevant today. What seemed like a disaster in the past is now a distant memory. The world does not stop. It moves forward, with or without you. Many people resist this. They hold on to old failures, past relationships, missed opportunities. They replay past mistakes, wishing they could undo them, dwelling on what was instead of dealing with what is. But the world does not wait for them to catch up, and the more time they spend looking backward, the more they fall behind. This is not to say the past is meaningless. It holds lessons, but it is a place for learning, not living. The more energy you spend regretting, the less energy you have for moving forward. People often act as if their past defines them. A single failure becomes proof they are incapable. A lost relationship becomes proof they are unlovable. A missed opportunity becomes proof they are unlucky. But these are just moments, events, not verdicts. The past is not a life sentence. It is just what happened before today. The world does not care about your past. It does not hold onto your failures, your embarrassments, or your missed chances. It simply moves on, and the sooner you accept this, the sooner you free yourself. Many struggle with this because they believe moving on means forgetting. It doesn't. Moving on means acknowledging what happened, accepting it, and refusing to let it control you. It means understanding that you cannot change the past, only your response to it. Think about people who cling to resentment. They carry old grudges, replaying past betrayals and injustices. They assume that holding onto anger gives them power, but in reality, they are stuck. The people they resent have moved on. The world has moved on. They are the only ones still trapped in an old story. The same applies to regret. People dwell on what they should have done, what they could have done differently. But no amount of thinking changes the past. The only thing regret accomplishes is wasted time. Moving on does not mean ignoring consequences. If you made a mistake, learn from it. If you hurt someone, make it right. If you failed, adjust your approach. But after that, let it go. Carrying the weight of every past mistake only makes the present harder. Life continues. Whether you move with it or not, the job you lost, someone else took it. The relationship that ended, both of you have changed. The opportunity you missed, other opportunities have replaced it. Nothing is frozen in time except in your mind. Some resist moving on because they believe the past was better. They romanticize old memories, forgetting the struggles that came with them. They wish things could return to how they were, but nostalgia is selective. It highlights the good and erases the bad. What you miss is not reality. It is an edited version of the past. This is why people struggle with change. They compare the present to an idealized past. But the past was never perfect. It just feels that way because you are no longer in it. Moving forward is not about forgetting. It is about choosing. Choosing to focus on what you can control. Choosing to build instead of dwell. Choosing to see the future as something you shape, not something that is shaped by your past. The world does not pause for anyone. It does not wait for you to process, to heal, to be ready. It simply moves. And your only choice is whether to move with it. A useful way to break free from the past is to focus on what comes next. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen?" Ask, "What do I do now?" Instead of reliving old mistakes, put that energy into taking action. The longer you wait, the harder it is to move. Another way to move forward is to limit how much space the past takes in your mind. If you constantly replay a regret or a painful event, you are reinforcing its power. The more you feed a memory, the stronger it becomes. But if you stop giving it attention, it fades, it loses its grip. Moving on is a skill. It takes practice. At first, it feels unnatural, but over time, it becomes second nature. You stop clinging to what cannot be changed, and you start focusing on what is still possible. The world does not revolve around your past, and that is a good thing. It means you are free. Free to create new experiences, free to grow beyond your mistakes, free to move forward without the weight of old stories holding you back. So if you are stuck, ask yourself, is the world holding me back, or am I holding myself back? Because in most cases, the answer is clear. People obsess over legacy. They want to be remembered. They want their work, their name, their existence to leave a lasting mark. They believe that if they accomplish enough, if they build something great, if they impress the world, they will achieve a form of immortality. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Every civilization has crumbled. Every great empire has faded. Every historical figure, no matter how influential, will eventually be forgotten. The world moves on, time erases everything. This is not nihilism, it is reality. Think about the people who lived 1,000 years ago, the rulers, the warriors, the thinkers. Most of their names are lost. Even those who are remembered exist only as vague stories, distorted by time. Their achievements meant everything to them in their moment, but they are meaningless now. The same will happen to you, to everyone. No matter how much you achieve, no matter how much recognition you gain, time will erase it. Your name might live on for a while, but eventually it will be nothing more than a name, and one day, not even that. Many people resist this idea. They want to believe that their work, their struggles, their existence have deeper meaning, that they will be remembered for centuries. But even the most famous figures, scientists, artists, leaders, are footnotes in the vast timeline of history. And history itself is temporary. Some will argue that what matters is the impact you have on the people around you, that your influence lives on through those you touch. But even this is temporary. The people you influence will be gone too. Their memories will fade, your actions, no matter how significant they seem now, will be reduced to nothing over time. This realization can feel unsettling. People want to believe they matter. But this is where the freedom lies. Because nothing matters in the long run, you are free to do what matters to you in the short run. Legacy is a trap. It makes people chase recognition instead of fulfillment. They work towards being admired instead of being happy. They sacrifice the present for a future that won't even remember them. But when you let go of the need to be remembered, you start living for the right reasons. If nothing lasts, then the only thing that matters is what you experience now. Your time, your relationships, your growth. Not how the world will remember you, but how you live while you are here. This shift in perspective removes unnecessary pressure. You do not need to build a lasting empire. You do not need to be extraordinary. You do not need to impress future generations, because they will not care, and that is not a bad thing. It is a relief. When you stop worrying about legacy, you start focusing on reality. You stop chasing status. You stop obsessing over long-term recognition. You start choosing what actually brings value to your life. This does not mean you should do nothing. It does not mean you should abandon ambition or give up on meaningful work. It means you should do these things because they matter to you, not because you hope they will matter to the distant future. Consider how many people waste their lives trying to be remembered. They work tirelessly, sacrificing their health, their relationships, their happiness, all for a legacy they will never see. They build businesses, write books, create art, not because they enjoy the process, but because they hope the world will remember them. But the world forgets, and when they are gone, so is their chance to enjoy life. Even those who achieve great things are rarely remembered for what they wanted. People remember Einstein, but not his personal struggles. They remember famous authors, but rarely read their least known works. History reduces people to a handful of details, stripping away the complexities of their actual lives. Understanding this is not about abandoning ambition. It is about shifting focus. Instead of trying to be remembered, focus on being present. Instead of working for a distant legacy, work for something that makes your life meaningful now. You are not here to be remembered. You are here to live. The world will forget you. But while you are here, you have the chance to experience, to create, to grow. Not for others, not for history, but for yourself. So stop chasing legacy. It is an illusion. Instead, focus on what is real, the present moment, because in the end, that is all you ever truly have. Fear controls most people. It dictates their decisions, limits their actions, and keeps them from doing what they actually want. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment. These emotions feel overwhelming, but in reality, they are illusions, temporary reactions, not permanent barriers. Most fears are not based on actual danger. They are based on imagined outcomes. Your mind constructs worst-case scenarios, amplifies risks, and convinces you that something bad will happen. But most of the time, the things you fear either never happen or are far less significant than you expected. Think about the things you once feared, conversations you dreaded, situations you avoided. Now, looking back, do they still seem as terrifying? Probably not. That pattern repeats throughout life. Fear feels real in the moment, but in hindsight, it is almost always exaggerated. The biggest trick fear plays is making you think it is protecting you, but in reality, it holds you back. It stops you from taking risks, from speaking up, from stepping into discomfort. It convinces you that safety is better than growth, but nothing meaningful happens in safety. Everything valuable, learning, success, confidence comes from moving through fear, not avoiding it. Many people wait for fear to disappear before they act. They think that once they feel ready, they will finally take the leap. But fear never fully disappears. The only way to reduce it is through action. You do the thing you fear, and only afterward does the fear shrink. Confidence does not come first, action does. Most fears also revolve around perception. People worry about how they look, how they sound, how others will judge them. But the truth is, most people are too focused on themselves to care. The awkward moment you replay in your head, forgotten by everyone else. The fear of saying something stupid. No one is analyzing your words as much as you are. Fear loses power when you stop giving it attention. The more you focus on fear, the bigger it becomes. The more you question yourself, the more hesitant you become. But when you act despite fear, when you take the leap anyway, you prove to yourself that fear was never as strong as it seemed. This applies to failure as well. Many people fear failure because they think it defines them. But failure is just an event. It is feedback, nothing more. The most successful people in the world have failed repeatedly. The difference is, they did not let fear of failure stop them from trying. Fear is also temporary. It spikes in the moment, but fades quickly. The difficult conversation you are avoiding, the fear leading up to it, is worse than the conversation itself. The decision you keep delaying, the anxiety about it is more draining than making the choice. Fear is a learned response. As children, we fear very little, mostly physical danger. But as we grow, we are taught to fear rejection, criticism, and failure. These fears are not natural, they are conditioned. And what is learned can be unlearned. The first step is recognizing that most fears are just thoughts, not reality. One way to weaken fear is exposure. The more you face what scares you, the less power it has. If you fear speaking up, practice speaking. If you fear failure, start small, fail, and realize that nothing truly bad happens. Each time you confront fear, it shrinks. Each time you avoid it, it grows. Another way to dismantle fear is logic. Ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen? Often, The worst outcome is minor, embarrassment, discomfort. A small are not life-altering events. When you break fear down rationally, it becomes easier to move past it. People often assume that fear is a sign to stop, but fear is actually a signal of growth. If something scares you, it probably means it is worth doing. The greatest achievements, starting a business, speaking in public, pursuing a passion, come with fear. But if you push through, the reward is always greater than the temporary discomfort. Some fear is useful. It keeps you from real danger. But most fear is unnecessary. It is not protecting you, it is limiting you, and the cost of letting fear control you is high. Every opportunity missed, every goal abandoned, every dream ignored because fear whispered, "What if?" The key is not to eliminate fear, but to act anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. There is no escaping fear completely, but you can train yourself to move through it. The next time fear stops you, ask yourself, is this fear based on reality, or is my mind exaggerating the risk? Most of the time, you will realize the fear is not as big as it seems. You do not need to be fearless. You just need to stop letting fear control you. So stop waiting for fear to disappear. It won't, but it also doesn't matter. What matters is what you do anyway. You trust your memories. You believe they are accurate records of your past. You assume that what you remember happened exactly as you recall. But the truth is, your memories are not reliable. They are not recordings of reality. They are reconstructions. Fluid, distorted, and often completely wrong. The brain does not store memories like a video camera. Instead, it pieces them together every time you recall them. Each time you remember something, your brain modifies it, filling in gaps, adjusting details, even rewriting events. What you remember today is not what actually happened. It is what your brain has reconstructed based on fragments, assumptions, and emotions. This is why memories change over time. A story you tell yourself repeatedly will start to feel more real, even if it is inaccurate. Minor details shift. Entire events can be added or removed. You can misremember something so completely that you become convinced it is true. Scientific studies have shown how easy it is to implant false memories. In experiments, people have been convinced they experienced events that never happened, being lost in a mall as a child, meeting someone who never existed, committing a crime they did not commit. A simple suggestion, repeated enough, can create a memory out of nothing. Your emotions also shape your memories. When you feel strongly about something, your brain adjusts the memory to fit your current feelings. A breakup might seem worse over time. A childhood event might feel happier than it actually was. Your emotions do not just color your memories, they alter them. Social influence also affects memory. When people around you recall an event differently, your memory can shift to align with theirs. This is why eyewitness testimonies are unreliable. People can be absolutely certain they saw something, even when they are completely wrong. Even your sense of self is built on distorted memories. You think your past experiences define who you are. But those experiences are not as real as you believe. They are altered versions of events, shaped by biases, emotions, and repetition. This does not mean memory is useless. It allows you to learn, to create narratives, to understand the world. But it does mean you should not trust it completely. When you argue with someone over the past, both of you might be wrong. When you dwell on past mistakes, you might be remembering them inaccurately. When you hold on to a grudge, you might be holding on to something that never happened the way you think it did. Memories also fade, details blur. What once felt vivid becomes uncertain. But instead of recognizing this, people assume their memories are correct, and that it is reality that is wrong. This is why people can argue so confidently about things that never happened. Their memory tells them it is true, and they believe it. Your memories are also shaped by your current beliefs. If you change your opinion about someone, your memories of them change as well. If you once admired a person but now dislike them, your brain rewrites the past, emphasizing their flaws while minimizing their good qualities. This happens without you realizing it. Your mind adjusts the past to fit your present. This also explains nostalgia. People look back on childhood as simpler, happier, more carefree. But was it? Or is that just how the brain filters the past? The struggles, the fears, the disappointments all fade. While the good moments remain, this does not mean childhood was bad, but it does mean nostalgia is selective. If your memories are unreliable, what does that mean for your identity? If who you are is based on past experiences, and those experiences are distorted, then what does that say about the self? It suggests that your identity is not as solid as you think. It is not built on facts, but on shifting recollections. This is not meant to be unsettling. In fact, it can be freeing. If your memories are not set in stone, then neither are you. You are not trapped by past mistakes, because the past you remember may not be the past that actually happened. You are not bound by old narratives, because those narratives are flexible. Understanding this changes the way you see the world. You become more skeptical of certainty. You become more open to different perspectives. You become less attached to old stories. So the next time you are convinced that something happened a certain way, remember, your memories are not reality. They are just your brain's best guess. And that guess is probably wrong. Most people live in the past. They replay old mistakes, hold on to regrets, and let past experiences shape how they see themselves, carrying old narratives, old emotions, old identities into the present long after they should have been left behind. But the past is gone. It does not exist anywhere except in your mind, and no matter how much you think about it, analyze it, or wish it had been different, it cannot be changed. The only thing that still exists, the only thing that has ever existed, is the present moment. People assume that holding on to the past helps them, that if they think about it enough, they will understand it, that if they regret something enough, they will make up for it. But none of that changes what has already happened. All it does is pull them out of reality, keeping them stuck in something they can no longer control. This is why so many people struggle with anxiety and regret. They are either living in the past, replaying moments that no longer exist, or living in the future, worrying about things that have not happened yet. While the only place life actually happens, the present, is ignored. Letting go of the past does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending things did not happen. It means accepting them without letting them define you. The past is just information, a lesson, a series of events that led to now, nothing more. Your mistakes do not exist anymore. They happened, but they are no longer happening. The version of you that made those mistakes is gone. The only thing that remains is your memory of them. And as we've already established, memory is unreliable. Many people hold on to past pain, believing it gives them identity, that if they let go of an old hurt, they are letting go of a part of themselves. But pain is not an identity. It is just an experience. Carrying it forever does not make you stronger. It only weighs you down. Others hold on to nostalgia, believing the past was better than the present. But the past was never as perfect as it seems. Your brain filters out the bad, leaving you with an idealized version of what was. So you do not miss the past. You miss the way you felt in those moments. And that feeling is something you can create again, here, now. Living in the present means fully engaging with what is in front of you. It means not letting old failures dictate your confidence, not letting old pain dictate your emotions, and not letting old versions of yourself dictate who you are now. It means realizing that every moment is new, that every second is a chance to think differently, act differently, and be different. The past only matters if you keep bringing it with you. Letting go of the past is not something that happens all at once. It is a practice, a skill. Some moments will pull you back into old thoughts, but the key is recognizing this and returning to the present. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. A useful way to ground yourself in the present is through awareness. Instead of being lost in thought, notice what is happening right now. Pay attention to what you are doing, where you are, how you feel. The more present you become, the less power the past has over you. Another way is to stop identifying with old stories. You are not your past mistakes. You are not your past successes. You are not who you were 5 years ago or even yesterday. Every moment, you are new, and the more you cling to an old version of yourself, the more you limit what is possible now. Some people struggle to move on because they feel they must resolve the past first. They think they need closure, apologies, or answers. But waiting for these things only keeps them trapped. Closure is not something given, it is something you decide. You do not need permission to move forward. Living in the present does not mean ignoring responsibility. It does not mean pretending consequences do not exist. But it does mean choosing where you put your energy. And the only place that energy has any impact is in the present. If you spend your time thinking about what should have happened, you miss what is happening. If you live in old regrets, you miss new opportunities. If you are too focused on the past, you are not really living. You are just replaying old moments in your mind. You cannot change what happened, but you can change how much power it has over you. Let go of what no longer serves you, not because it did not matter, but because it no longer exists. The only thing that matters now. Society tells you that you are important, that your opinions, your desires, and your identity are significant, that you have a purpose, a role to play, a unique place in the world. From childhood, you are taught that you are special, that your choices matter, that your life has meaning beyond yourself. But this is an illusion. Society does not care about you as an individual. It cares about you as a function, a worker, a consumer, a contributor to the system. The belief that you are important is not for your benefit. It is a tool used to keep you engaged, obedient, and productive. From the moment you are born, you are given a name, a nationality, a role. You are placed into a structure designed to shape your beliefs, your ambitions, and your sense of self. You are told to work hard to achieve, to build a legacy, but who benefits from this? Not you, the system benefits. The idea that your choices matter is useful, not because they truly matter on a cosmic scale, but because it keeps you invested, keeps you striving, competing, consuming. You are led to believe that if you achieve enough, if you impress enough people, if you leave your mark, you will be remembered. But history forgets almost everyone. Social media reinforces this illusion. It gives you a platform, a digital presence, a way to curate your identity. It makes you feel visible. But this is a manufactured sense of importance. Your posts, your opinions, your moments, they are all fleeting. The algorithm rewards engagement, not significance. It does not care about you, only about the content you provide. This is not to say you are worthless. It is to say that your importance is not inherent, it is assigned. And the system that assigns it does so to serve its own interests. You are valuable as long as you contribute. Once you stop, you are forgotten. The corporate world operates the same way. You are told to work hard, to climb the ranks, to build something meaningful. But businesses do not care about individuals, they care about results. The moment you are no longer useful, you are replaced. Your years of effort, your loyalty, your sacrifice, none of it matters in the long run. This is why retirement feels like an identity crisis for so many people. They spend decades believing they are essential, only to realize they were just temporary cogs in a machine. The system moves on without them. Even on a societal level, you are replaceable. Elections come and go, policies change, cultural trends shift. The causes people fight for today will be replaced by new concerns tomorrow. You are not shaping the world, you are reacting to it, playing a part in a much larger pattern that continues with or without you. This realization can be unsettling. People want to believe they matter, that their actions have deep significance, that their lives are part of something greater. But the truth is, society only tells you this because it keeps you engaged. The world is not watching you. It is not waiting for your next move. It is simply continuing, indifferent to your presence. But there is freedom in this. If you do not truly matter to society, then you are free from its expectations. You do not have to chase status, approval, or recognition. You do not have to meet anyone's standards but your own. The trick is understanding this without falling into despair. Your life does not need to be important to be meaningful. Meaning is not something given to you by society. It is something you define for yourself. So let go of the illusion that you are central to the world. You are not. And that is exactly why you can live however you choose. People want to be remembered. They want their existence to matter beyond their lifetime, imagining leaving behind something lasting, something that ensures they are not just another name lost to time. This is the root of the fear of being forgotten. It is the fear that, after you are gone, nothing you did will have meant anything, that your actions, your struggles, your achievements, all of it, will disappear as if you were never here. But this fear is based on a flawed assumption, assuming that being remembered changes something, that recognition after death gives life more value. But the truth is, you will not be here to experience that recognition. Whether people remember you or not, you will be gone, and their memories of you will not change your reality. Most people are forgotten. Almost everyone who has ever lived is unknown to us. Even those who left behind monuments, books, or discoveries have become distant names in history, symbols rather than people. And even those symbols will eventually fade. The fear of being forgotten comes from ego, from the belief that our individual existence is significant in a way that must be preserved. But the universe does not recognize individuals, does not record names, emotions, or personal stories. It simply continues. Society encourages this fear because it keeps people striving, convincing them to chase achievements, to seek recognition, to build legacies. But this is just another illusion, one designed to keep you participating. Consider how many people spend their lives trying to be remembered, working long hours, sacrificing personal happiness, and chasing status, not for themselves, but for the approval of others. They hope that one day their efforts will be recognized. But who is doing the recognizing and for how long? Fame, wealth, success, none of it guarantees a lasting memory. Celebrities, political figures, even historical icons, over time, they become footnotes. Their names may persist, but the reality of their lives, their struggles, their emotions, those disappear. What remains is a hollow version of who they were, shaped by others, simplified, and eventually forgotten. This is why people fear death. It is not just the end of life, it is the end of relevance. But the truth is, relevance was always an illusion. The world does not pause when someone dies. It moves on, just as it always has. Understanding this does not mean life is meaningless. It means life is free from the pressure of legacy. You do not need to be remembered to have lived well. You do not need to make a mark to make your existence worthwhile. Some people believe that their impact on others is what makes them live on, that as long as someone remembers them, they still exist in some way. But even this is temporary. The people who remember you will be gone too. Their memories of you will fade, just as yours will fade for others. This is not tragic, it is simply reality. Letting go of this fear is liberating. It means you can focus on living, instead of trying to control how you will be remembered. Means you can do things because they matter to you, not because you hope they will matter to the future. Ask yourself, if you knew for certain that no one would remember you in 100 years, would you live differently? Would you make different choices? If the answer is yes, then you are not truly living for yourself. You are living for a perception that will not last. This is why seeking external validation is pointless. It is temporary, fleeting. The approval you crave today will mean nothing tomorrow. The reputation you build will not outlast time. Instead of fearing being forgotten, accept it, embrace it, recognize that it is not a failure. It is simply how existence works. You do not need to be remembered to have lived well. The value of your life is not measured in how long your name survives, but in how fully you engage with the time you have. So let go of the fear. Let go of the need to be remembered. Focus on living, not on being remembered for having lived. The universe is vast beyond comprehension. Billions of galaxies, trillions of stars. An expanse so large that even light, traveling at its maximum speed, takes billions of years to cross it. And in all of this, you are a single moment, a brief flash of existence in an infinite void. Most people never stop to think about this. They live as if their concerns, their ambitions, and their identities are central to reality. But in the grand scheme of things, none of it truly matters. The planet you live on is a tiny rock orbiting an average star in an average galaxy, in a universe so large that its scale is impossible to grasp. Even human history, what we consider important, what we build, what we fight for, is nothing on a cosmic scale. Civilizations rise and fall, entire cultures vanish, and the universe does not notice. The events that seem world-changing today will eventually be forgotten, buried under layers of time. This perspective can feel unsettling. People want to believe that their lives hold deep, universal significance. They want to believe they are more than just temporary beings floating in an indifferent void. But the universe is not built to care. It does not reward meaning. It does not acknowledge purpose. It simply exists, and so do you, for a fraction of a second in cosmic time. Then you are gone. Most people resist this thought. They try to find ways to make themselves matter. They cling to legacies, religions, causes, anything that gives them a sense of importance. But importance is relative. It exists only within human perception. Outside of that, it is meaningless. This is why people chase status, recognition, and validation. They fear insignificance. So they build careers, reputations, and social influence, hoping it will make them real in the eyes of others. But none of this lasts. The buildings, the achievements, the personal brands, all of it crumbles with time. Consider the billions of people who lived before you, the nameless masses who built cities, fought wars, loved, suffered, and died. They were once as real as you are now, with hopes and fears as intense as yours. And yet, they are gone, and the world continues without them. If you go even further back, before recorded history, entire civilizations vanished without a trace. Their stories, their struggles, erased. The same fate awaits everything that exists today. One day, the last trace of humanity will disappear, and the universe will move on as if we were never here. This is not meant to be depressing. It is meant to be freeing. If nothing you do is permanent, then you are not obligated to chase permanence. If you are just a blip in an infinite void, then you do not need to prove your significance to anyone. Your existence is yours alone. It does not have to fit into some greater plan. It does not have to be remembered. It does not have to matter in any grand way. It simply is. This realization allows you to let go, to stop seeking validation from a world that itself is temporary, to stop worrying about a future that will erase everything anyway, to focus on the only thing that is real, the moment you are in. If you are insignificant in the grand scheme, then you are free from grand expectations. You can live on your terms, without the burden of legacy, without the fear of being forgotten. The universe does not care about you, and that is exactly why you are free. Everything is temporary. Every object, every idea, every memory, given enough time, they disappear. Civilizations collapse, beliefs fade, even the physical universe itself is not permanent. Nothing stays, nothing lasts. At first, this might seem unsettling. People crave stability. They want something solid, something that remains unchanged no matter what happens. But no such thing exists. The world is in constant motion, always shifting, always moving forward. What you consider important today will one day be meaningless. The things you obsess over, your goals, your worries, your fears, will vanish. The people you love, the things you have built, even your own body will eventually disappear, no exceptions. This is not a flaw in existence. It is the nature of existence itself. Everything you see, everything you know, is just passing through. For many, this realization brings anxiety. They want something to hold on to, something to ground them. But clinging to what is temporary only causes suffering. The tighter you hold, the more painful it becomes when things inevitably change. Freedom comes when you stop resisting this truth. When you accept that nothing is permanent, you stop fearing loss. You stop trying to control what cannot be controlled. You stop grasping at things that will slip through your fingers, no matter how tightly you hold them. Most suffering comes from attachment, wanting things to stay the same when they never do. People fear losing relationships, possessions, status. They believe their happiness depends on keeping these things. But nothing can be kept forever. Sooner or later, everything must be let go. This is why people struggle with change. They want things to stay as they are. They want to freeze happy moments, preserve relationships, hold on to youth. But life does not work that way. It moves forward, indifferent to what you want. Think about the moments in your life that have already passed, the friendships that faded, the places you once called home, the versions of yourself that no longer exist. At the time, those things felt permanent, but now they are gone. And yet, you are still here, life continues. This is the key. You are not meant to cling, you are meant to flow. When you stop trying to hold on to what is temporary, you stop fearing its loss. Instead, you begin to see the beauty in impermanence. You stop demanding that things last forever and start appreciating them for what they are, fleeting, yet meaningful. Impermanence is not a curse, it is a gift. It means that no mistake lasts forever, no failure is permanent, no pain stays the same. Everything shifts, everything moves. This also means that your struggles, no matter how overwhelming they feel now, will not last. The anxieties that consume you today will fade. The setbacks that seem unbearable will eventually be forgotten. Nothing you experience, good or bad, is eternal. People resist this idea because they want meaning. They want to believe that what they do, what they achieve, will last. They want their names to be remembered, their work to be recognized, but recognition fades. Names are forgotten. Even the greatest achievements in history will one day disappear, swallowed by time. Some try to fight this by leaving a legacy. They build businesses, create art, raise families, hoping that in some way, a part of them will survive. But even legacies fade, buildings crumble, books go unread, bloodlines disappear. The world will move on, and so will you. This is why you are free. If nothing is permanent, nothing can truly hold you back. The fears, the regrets, the attachments, they are all temporary. Once you embrace that, you stop wasting energy trying to control the uncontrollable. When you stop clinging, you start living. You stop postponing happiness. You stop chasing an illusion of permanence. You begin to appreciate life for what it is, a brief, ever-changing experience. Nothing lasts, and because of that, you have nothing to lose. And that is what makes you free. You experience life as if you are in control. You believe there is a you inside your head, making decisions, thinking thoughts, perceiving the world. But this is an illusion. Consciousness, as you experience it, is not what it seems. Your brain is just a machine, running processes you do not control. Neurons fire, electrical signals move through networks, patterns emerge. The sensation of being you is nothing more than the result of this process. There is no central self, no fixed entity directing everything, just a system reacting to stimuli, creating the illusion of continuity. Science has shown that decisions are made before you are even aware of them. Brain scans can detect activity before you consciously choose to act. Your mind rationalizes these actions afterward, giving you the false impression that you were in control all along. Even your thoughts are not truly yours. They appear unbidden, shaped by past experiences, genetics, and external influences. You do not choose them, they simply arise. If you were truly in control, you could decide your next thought before it appeared, but you cannot. Memory adds to the illusion. You believe you are the same person you were yesterday, a year ago, a decade ago, but your brain is constantly changing. The self is not a fixed entity. It is a story pieced together from past experiences, and even those experiences are unreliable. Experiments have shown that memories are malleable. They change every time they are recalled. The past you remember is not the past that happened. It is just a reconstructed narrative, altered each time your brain retrieves it. This illusion of self is reinforced by language. You say, "I decided," "I thought," "I remember," as if there is a single entity behind those actions. But there is no I behind the thoughts, just the thoughts themselves. The brain generates them, and the mind claims ownership after the fact. This raises a question. If consciousness is an illusion, what exactly is experiencing life? The answer is that there is no separate experiencer. There is only experience, thoughts happen, sensations arise, awareness exists, but there is no self directing any of it. This might sound unsettling. People like to believe they are in control. They want to feel like they are the authors of their own lives. But the truth is, the sense of self is just another perception, no more real than an optical illusion. And yet, this realization is freeing. If there is no fixed self, there is nothing to defend, nothing to protect. You do not need to hold on to old identities, past mistakes, or rigid beliefs. You are just a system, adapting in real time. People carry unnecessary burdens because they believe they are a solid, unchanging entity. They hold grudges. They cling to outdated views of themselves. They fear change. But if the self is an illusion, none of these things are necessary. There is no you to preserve, just a process, flowing moment to moment. This does not mean that nothing matters. It means that meaning is something the mind constructs, just like everything else. There is no grand significance beyond what is assigned. If you let go of the illusion of self, you stop clinging, you stop worrying about how you are perceived, you stop defining yourself by your past. You simply exist, experiencing life without resistance. Let go of the idea that you are in control. Accept that consciousness is just a byproduct of a physical process, and in doing so, experience the freedom that comes with knowing. There is no you to hold onto in the first place. People spend their lives chasing validation. They seek approval from friends, family, strangers, constantly adjusting their actions to be accepted, respected, admired. They believe that if they can get enough validation, they will finally feel complete. But this validation does not exist. There is no final moment where you are validated enough to stop seeking more. No achievement, no compliment, no recognition that will permanently satisfy you. The approval you crave today will not matter tomorrow. The admiration you chase will always feel temporary, because it is. The human mind is wired to adapt. When you get what you want, the feeling of satisfaction fades, you reach a goal, and almost immediately, you set a new one. You receive praise, and soon after, you need more. Validation is like a drug. It works for a moment, then wears off. This is why external validation is a trap. You believe that if you just achieve one more thing, if you just gain one more person's approval, you will finally be at peace. But the finish line always moves. No amount of recognition will ever be enough. Social media amplifies this problem. Every post, every comment, every like feeds the illusion that validation is real, that if enough people approve of you, it will mean something, but it never does. The satisfaction is momentary, the craving endless. People who seek validation from others give away their power. They allow strangers to define their worth. They let opinions dictate their choices. They become trapped, living not for themselves, but for the fleeting approval of people who are too distracted with their own lives to truly care. The irony is, the people whose approval you chase are also chasing approval. Everyone is too consumed with their own insecurities to truly validate anyone else. The validation you are seeking is from people who are just as lost as you are. There is no universal approval. No matter what you do, someone will disapprove. You can try to be kind, and someone will call you weak. You can try to be strong, and someone will call you arrogant. You cannot please everyone, and even if you could, it would not bring you peace. So why chase something that does not exist? Why let the opinions of others dictate your life? People justify their need for validation in different ways. Some say they want to be respected. Others say they want to make an impact. But at the core, it is the same desire. To be seen, to be acknowledged, to be told they are enough. Yet, no amount of recognition ever fills that void. Businesses and media profit from this insecurity. Advertisements tell you that you need to prove yourself through what you wear, what you own, what you achieve, but the cycle never ends. Once you reach one level of approval, the next one is waiting. Many people waste years trying to impress those who do not even care. They chase careers they do not enjoy. They buy things they do not need. They mold their personalities to fit expectations. But no matter what they do, there is always more approval to seek, always more judgment to avoid. The only validation that matters is the one you give yourself, not because it makes you superior, but because it is the only one that lasts. When you stop seeking approval, you become free. You no longer act out of fear of rejection. You no longer mold yourself into what others expect. You do what you want, not what will be praised. This does not mean you should reject all feedback. It means you should stop living for validation that will never be enough. Approval is fleeting. Satisfaction from within is the only thing that lasts. So stop chasing validation. It is an illusion, and you do not need it. You believe you are a single, continuous self, a fixed identity that has remained the same from childhood to now, a core you that makes decisions, holds opinions, and directs your life. But this is an illusion. There is no stable, unchanging self, no solid entity that stays the same over time. What you call you is nothing more than a shifting collection of memories, thoughts, and behaviors, constantly changing, constantly adapting. Look at who you were 5 years ago. Did you think the same way? Did you value the same things? Did you see yourself in the same way? Probably not. Now look further back, 10 years, 15. The version of you that existed then would likely feel like a stranger now. Your personality, beliefs, and desires are shaped by experience. They change based on what happens to you, what you learn, and what you are exposed to. There is no fixed self directing this process. There is only a pattern of responses, shifting, evolving, never static. Science confirms this. The brain is not a rigid structure. It constantly rewires itself. Old connections fade, new ones form. Even your memories are unreliable, changing every time you recall them, reshaped by time and bias. If the self were real, it would not change. It would remain stable, unaltered by time. But nothing in your mind stays the same. The only constant in your existence is change itself. The illusion of self is useful. It allows you to function in society, to tell a coherent story about your life. But that story is just that, a story, a narrative created by your brain to make sense of the chaos of existence. This is why people struggle with identity. They want to define themselves, to hold onto something solid. They say, "This is who I am," as if it is permanent. But what happens when their beliefs shift, when their circumstances change? They suffer because they are trying to cling to something that does not exist. People also fear change because they believe they will lose themselves. But there is no stable self to lose. Change does not erase who you are. It simply replaces one temporary version with another. This is why growth often feels uncomfortable. You are not just learning new things, you are discarding old versions of yourself. This can feel like loss, but it is not. It is simply the process of existence. If the self is an illusion, then the fear of not being good enough is meaningless. There is no fixed you to be judged. There is just a process, unfolding moment to moment. Think about how you define yourself, your name, your job, your opinions. But none of these things are permanent. They can change. They will change. The only reason you believe in a solid self is because your brain stitches together a story that makes it feel that way. This does not mean you do not exist. It means you do not exist in the way you assume. You are not a single, unchanging entity. You are an ongoing process, constantly being rewritten. Understanding this is freeing. It means you do not have to be trapped by past mistakes. You do not have to be bound by old labels, old fears, old limitations. You are not a fixed identity. You are a process, a constantly adapting, constantly evolving experience. If you let go of the illusion of a fixed self, you also let go of unnecessary suffering. You stop clinging to past versions of yourself. You stop fearing change. You stop defining yourself by external labels. You are not a single, permanent self. You never were. And that is exactly why you are free. You assume that what you believe is true, that your opinions, your values, your understanding of the world are based on logic, evidence, and personal experience. But in reality, everything you believe is shaped by forces outside your control. Culture, upbringing, language, and biological instincts. Your beliefs are not objective. They are not the result of independent thought. They are the product of conditioning. From the moment you are born, you are fed information. What is right? What is wrong? What is normal? And you do not choose your first beliefs. They are given to you. Look at history. Every generation has been convinced that its worldview was correct, only for the next generation to prove it wrong. Science, morality, social norms, what was once considered fact is now outdated. And if past societies were wrong, why assume yours is any different? Even your senses lie to you. Your brain does not perceive reality as it is. It filters, distorts, and simplifies information to make sense of the world. You see colors that do not exist outside your perception. You hear sounds differently based on context. You fill in gaps in memory without realizing it. Your entire experience of reality is an illusion constructed by your mind. This extends to everything you think you know. The way you define success, happiness, purpose, all shaped by external forces. If you had been born in a different place, at a different time, you would believe completely different things. And this alone proves that beliefs are not truth, they are simply perspectives. You might argue that some things must be true, but truth itself is relative. Every system of thought, philosophy, science, religion is just a model, a way of interpreting reality. None of them capture reality itself. They only create useful frameworks for navigating it. Even logic, the foundation of rational thought, is built on assumptions. You trust cause and effect, but you cannot prove it absolutely. You assume the world outside your mind is real, but you can never be certain. Every belief, no matter how fundamental, rests on something unprovable. And this is why people resist changing their minds. They fear uncertainty. They fear admitting they were wrong. But clinging to a belief does not make it true. It only makes it familiar. Beliefs are tools, not truths. They are meant to be questioned, updated, discarded when they no longer serve you. And the moment you stop examining your beliefs, you stop thinking for yourself. Most people never do this. They hold on to their beliefs as if they are part of their identity. They fear being wrong because they mistake belief for self. But if everything you believe is just a construct, then there is no need to cling to anything. This is not to say that nothing matters. It means you are free to discard the beliefs that no longer work for you. You do not have to hold onto ideas just because they were given to you. You do not have to defend beliefs that no longer align with reality. This also means that arguments over beliefs are meaningless. People argue over politics, religion, morality, each convinced they are right. But right is just a perspective. Everyone is filtering reality through their own biases, their own conditioning. They are not defending truth. They are defending the version of reality that feels safest to them. If you recognize that beliefs are constructs, you stop being controlled by them. You stop taking everything so seriously. You stop needing to prove yourself right. Instead, you focus on what is useful, what helps you navigate the world, rather than what gives you a false sense of certainty. Let go of certainty. Accept that your understanding of reality is incomplete, and in doing so, free yourself from the illusion that you already know the truth. You assume that what you believe is true, that your opinions, your values, your understanding of the world are based on logic, evidence, and personal experience. But in reality, everything you believe is shaped by forces outside your control: culture, upbringing, language, and biological instincts. Your beliefs are not objective, not the result of independent thought. They are the product of conditioning. From the moment you are born, you are fed information: what is right, what is wrong, what is normal. You do not choose your first beliefs, they are given to you. Look at history. Every generation has been convinced that its worldview was correct, only for the next generation to prove it wrong. Science, morality, social norms. What was once considered fact is now outdated. If past societies were wrong, why assume yours is any different? Even your senses lie to you. Your brain does not perceive reality as it is. It filters, distorts, and simplifies information to make sense of the world. You see colors that do not exist outside your perception. You hear sounds differently based on context. You fill in gaps in memory without realizing it. Your entire experience of reality is an illusion constructed by your mind. This extends to everything you think you know. The way you define success, happiness, purpose, all shaped by external forces. If you had been born in a different place, at a different time, you would believe completely different things. This alone proves that beliefs are not truth, they are simply perspectives. You might argue that some things must be true, but truth itself is relative. Every system of thought, philosophy, science, religion, is just a model, a way of interpreting reality. None of them capture reality itself. They only create useful frameworks for navigating it. Even logic, the foundation of rational thought, is built on assumptions. You trust cause and effect, but you cannot prove it absolutely. You assume the world outside your mind is real, but you can never be certain. Every belief, no matter how fundamental, rests on something unprovable. This is why people resist changing their minds. They fear uncertainty. They fear admitting they were wrong. But clinging to a belief does not make it true. It only makes it familiar. Beliefs are tools, not truths. They are meant to be questioned, updated, discarded when they no longer serve you. The moment you stop examining your beliefs, you stop thinking for yourself. Most people never do this. They hold on to their beliefs as if they are part of their identity. They fear being wrong because they mistake belief for self. But if everything you believe is just a construct, then there is no need to cling to anything. This is not to say that nothing matters. It means you are free to discard the beliefs that no longer work for you. You do not have to hold onto ideas just because they were given to you. You do not have to defend beliefs that no longer align with reality. This also means that arguments over beliefs are meaningless. People argue over politics, religion, morality, each convinced they are right. But right is just a perspective. Everyone is filtering reality through their own biases, their own conditioning. They are not defending truth. They are defending the version of reality that feels safest to them. If you recognize that beliefs are constructs, you stop being controlled by them. You stop taking everything so seriously. You stop needing to prove yourself right. Instead, you focus on what is useful, what helps you navigate the world, rather than what gives you a false sense of certainty. Your mind is not a recording device. It does not store reality as it is. It creates a version of reality that makes sense to you. Two people can experience the same event and remember it completely differently. Neither of them is lying, yet neither is objectively correct. This is why memory is unreliable. Studies have shown that every time you recall an event, you unknowingly alter it, the details shift, emotions distort the facts. Over time, you create a version of the past that never actually happened. If you cannot trust your own memories, how much can you trust your beliefs? This is why rigid thinking is dangerous. People become trapped in old ideas, unable to evolve. They defend outdated beliefs, even when presented with evidence to the contrary. They build their identities around a specific worldview and refuse to let it go. But what happens when you let go? What happens when you stop treating your beliefs as absolute? You become adaptable, open-minded, free. You no longer feel the need to be right all the time. You no longer waste energy defending ideas that were never truly yours. You allow yourself to grow, to change, to evolve without fear. Let go of certainty. Accept that your understanding of reality is incomplete, and in doing so, free yourself from the illusion that you already know the truth. You think of your personality as something uniquely yours, a deep, defining aspect of who you are. But in reality, your personality is not something you created. It is an accident, an outcome of genetics, environment, and random experiences beyond your control. From the moment you were born, your brain was shaped by factors you did not choose. Your genetic makeup influenced how you respond to stimuli, how your emotions work, and even how much risk you are willing to take, while your early environment determined how you saw the world, whether you felt safe, whether you trusted others, whether you learned to be confident or anxious. Every event in your life, big or small, has altered the way you think and behave. A childhood memory, a conversation, a moment of failure, each shaped your reactions, your fears, your desires. If you had been raised in a different country, by different parents, with different experiences, you would not be the same person. Your preferences, your habits, even your sense of humor, they all came from somewhere. You did not build your personality from scratch. It was assembled for you, piece by piece, by forces you did not control. People like to believe they have a true self, a core personality that is fixed and real, but personality is fluid. Studies show that people change over time, sometimes in ways they never expected. The traits you see as fundamental to who you are today may fade in the future. The things you once disliked may become things you enjoy, and the way you react to life will shift as new experiences reshape your mind. Even your thoughts are not truly yours. The ideas that enter your head are influenced by the books you read, the people you interact with, the media you consume. Your opinions are echoes of the world around you, and if you had been exposed to different influences, you would think differently. This does not mean personality does not exist. It means personality is not something fixed. It is a moving target, a shifting construct, not a deep truth about who you are. People believe in fixed personality traits because they want stability. They want to believe that they are a certain way, that they have a real identity that stays the same. But this belief is just another illusion. If personality were fixed, people would never change. Yet, they do. You have likely experienced this yourself. Think about how you saw yourself 5 or 10 years ago. Were you the same person? Did you have the same fears, the same desires, the same way of thinking? Probably not. You evolved, because personality is not something you are. It is something that happens to you. Psychologists have studied personality for decades, and while some traits seem stable, even those can shift under the right circumstances. Trauma, success, failure, new environments, these can reshape your personality in ways you never expected. You are not who you were yesterday, and you are not who you will be tomorrow. This also means that you are not as unique as you think. The traits you define yourself by, your strengths, your weaknesses, your quirks, are not exclusive to you. Millions of people have been shaped by similar forces, developing similar personalities. You are not an exception. You are a product of the same chaotic process as everyone else. Some people resist this idea. They want to believe they are special, that their personality is an expression of something deeper. But nothing about you was inevitable. If things had played out differently, you would be different. This realization can be unsettling. If your personality is just a result of random factors, does that mean you have no control? No, it means you are free. If personality is not fixed, then you are not trapped in being a certain way. You are not naturally shy or naturally confident or naturally anything. You are simply a result of conditioning, and conditioning can change. This is why self-improvement is possible. If personality were rigid, no one could grow, No one could overcome fears. No one could develop new strengths. But people do, because personality is flexible. Your personality is just an accident, but that is not a bad thing. It means you are not bound by it. You are free to change, to redefine yourself, to let go of whatever parts of you no longer serve you. There is no real you waiting to be discovered. There is only the version of you that exists right now, shaped by the past, but not trapped by it. And if that version no longer fits who you want to be, you can change it.